Welcome to Strung Out, the podcast that looks at life through the lens of an artist. Your host is the artist, writer, and musician, Martin Lawrence McCormack. Now here's Marty.
All right, welcome to Strung Out, and this is our historic moment. The man that I'm sharing this screen with finally convinced me after 3 years to buy Zoom Pro. So here we are, and it's David ROCCO FACCHINI out there in beautiful California, Oakland. And how are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I thought since this is our first time, it's not our first time talking, but our first time just having this modality, it would be good to bring people up to speed with what you've been doing. You're a filmmaker, you're a director, you've done you wear a lot of hats in your life. So go ahead and start in there. And then we'll start moving into culture with a little C.
Okay. Yeah, I've been a storyteller for stage and screen and a little bit of beyond in my time. Had a run of comedy, performing and directing in Chicago, did set stage design. I'm a stop motion animator. Most recently, I traveled the United States for 2 years, hitting all 48 states and talking to folks with a word association interview style. And I'm working on that film right now that is set to be released later this summer called USA to Z. I've known Marty for a while. Actually, Marty helped collaborate on my very first film, which was a stop motion film where Marty provided a great song for the crescendo of my film. So I also know Marty through Annie, who's like good friends with her since high school, I think. So yeah.
So Annie, for those of you, that's my wife. I do reference her on this, but from time to time, I think I had one podcast interview with her about herbs once. Cool. Give us the update on USA to Z.
Going well. It's a lot of work, and one of the tricks of it is that I have hours upon hours of interviews that I've done with folks across the nation. Since I'm so close to that process, and I did most of this traveling for the 2 years while I was in a van by myself, I know what I want and where I want it. Soliciting help for the film is a little bit tricky, but I've been able to get some great animation. For an example, I also run an entity called Mo Stop Mo, which has a yearly online stop motion festival. We also produce shorts. One of our shorts was recently did really well. It was even featured in Cannes. But through Mo Stop Mo, I'm getting some collaboration for my animation for the film. There's animation explainers and also different feelings. So one of my main animators through Mo Stop Mo is named Zadalzi Dingle, and he's done some amazing animation for my film. So I've been outside of working on the film and then also trying to live life. There's been it just takes time to put this together. A trailer that I was hoping to be put out in January, I'm hoping to be out by the end of this month. A teaser trailer. So things are moving along. It's slowly but surely, but I'm liking the direction it's going. And one of the things about directing your own projects is probably as important for filmmaking as it is in real life is the self-edit. Trying not to squeeze everything in. So that's where it's at right now. That's what's been my main focus for the last couple of years.
A couple thoughts come to mind. First of all, I want you to expound on self-edit, because I think that's a trip up for a lot of artists. The idea of when is enough and how much do I get in the way of myself?
Those can be overlapping, but also two separate concepts. Being in the way of yourself. Yeah. Being in the way of myself is, for me, that's a tricky one. I guess procrastination is the first thing that comes to mind for me as a creator, because there's a lot of fears as an artist of putting yourself out there, putting out the wrong version of yourself. I use humor a lot, and humor can be interpreted different ways, especially if it's delivered flatly. So there's a lot of different variables in which you have to put yourself out there and just trust that it will be received. The self edit is very important. I've even making this film, and even as a philosophy of evolution, one of the main themes of one of the main themes for USA to Z is storytelling as it pertains to the human condition and how we receive stories. Like, everyone's version of the United States is different, curtailed to their experiences and what they've been taught, what they've been sometimes just fed and regurgitated. When we think of self-editing, it's almost like an obligation, in my opinion, if you want to participate in the social experiment of evolution, in that I feel the next form of evolution is social, emotional, and communal. We're walking and talking, but the idea of not saying everything that comes to your mind just because it feels good, but thinking about the community, thinking about when to hold back, thinking about when to assert yourself, and actually having the courage to assert yourself. There's a lot of social media warriors, but maybe they're not necessarily doing something that is actually changing the community. And then there are people who are doing stuff. So the idea of self-editing is really putting your money where your mouth is, and maybe not having your mouth write a check that your body can't cash or your actions can't cash.
Yeah. And you just, when you're talking about that idea of creating a community and online, even artistically, I think of really what's morphed for myself for the Mr. Marty show that started out as a pandemic kind of thing. And then I realized what it's ending up being is like this creative community that's online from around the world. Yeah. And it is what it is, but that's a tangent in itself.
Just as a side for that, I don't mean to interrupt your thought, but it sounds like you're saying it is what it is. It's, as a performer, I would imagine the community that is virtual isn't as rewarding as being live and in person. The energy you feel, even though you have a farther reach, what like is do you, I'm hearing that maybe it's not as fulfilling.
I think the difference
or it's
is
differently fulfilling.
Live performance, I think, is always, from an artistic standpoint, the best. And I love the fact that with live performance, it goes up into the ether and it's gone, unless, even when it's recorded. That's why studio recordings are never as good as a live show. In the case of an online community, artistic community, it's not so much the interaction, it's the presentation by people of their own creativity. And the challenge, at least with the Mr. Marty thing, is encouraging people to let go of their fear, to become even more creative and think along the lines of what can I do that can be even more artistic? How can I expand on my creativity? Right. That's where the perfectionist in me gets a little worried, where I'm looking at something and I'm like, are you pushing yourself in the right direction? And some of these people that contribute out of the pandemic, they weren't even there in that frame of mind.
Sure.
I digress in a big way with that as far as online communities, and we should talk about that probably. I want to touch on something that I think a lot of artists, myself included, I have a problem with, and that is the idea of self-promotion. The idea of you've had films at Cannes, and what do you do to promote yourself? and the financial end of things. Those are daunting to any artist.
Yes.
And do you have any insights?
Luckily, The Cookie Cutter, which is the film that was showcased during Cannes, it did. I the most I really did with The Cookie Cutter is had podcasts, promoted, submitted it to a lot of festivals. Fortunately, it got picked up and awarded in several film festivals, and that momentum got attention from an entity that does a presentation in Cannes every year. So it was just like they saw what we had done, and that fell in our lap. But I will say this, and this is the tricky thing about news, and maybe people realize or they don't realize, some of the best promotion that I've ever gotten while doing comedy in Chicago or elsewise, you have to pay for it. Getting those connections, I do have connections in media here and there, and that's helpful. But you have to let people know you exist to a degree, and that means paying for it with money, paying for it with time and equity, sweat equity, trying to get yourself out there, pressing flesh. There's really no formula to being received. You put yourself out there, whether it's received or not is up to your community, and some things are received, some things aren't, and that's just the way it is. I've often heard people say, how do I make money as a filmmaker? How do I make money as an artist? And I guess my question, my response is always, the question is flawed, because not even as an artist, but as someone who's creative and that you create, it's akin to what I would imagine it'd be akin to as having a child. It's, you don't have a child for that child. Ideally, you don't have a child to profit from the child. You create something out of love. And if you get something in return, then it's all gravy. But fulfilling your need to create is asserting your purpose on this planet. Why are you here? What are you here to contribute? And if you are doing this and it is fulfilling for you, that pays more than money does. I've done plenty of projects without getting any pay for it because I believed in it. I wanted it to exist, and then it existed. If something comes of it, that's great. And then, of course, you have to pay the bills, which, as they are now, more expensive than ever. So I could understand artists having a harder go at it, but I've seen so many resourceful people do so many interesting things. It's just like people create. If they haven't been squashed from creating, they will continue to create.
What I hear you saying is maybe this is where the artistic community thing online or whatever, you feel the world is turning, to paraphrase you, a little more artisanal. We are becoming, and maybe with AI, all our work, all the menial work will be done for us, and everybody's going to be an artist. But the point that you're making is a valid point in the sense that, yes, you create because you want to bring beauty or whatever, touch souls is what I like to say. And yeah, you can do it as an independent person. But when you have something like this USA to Z that you really believe in and you want to get it out there, what kind of money are we talking about to get somebody to pay attention to you?
It's a tricky one because once I'm done with this, I entered into festivals. I keep paying attention to festivals, and festivals can range in what that contributes. And I guess when the opportunity presents itself, I do have a producer attached to my project, Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine, and he's based in Chicago. And he has been really great in helping me, figure out what to do with this for the next phase. But to have a number attached to it, it's really tricky. If you're looking for hard numbers for a feature film, I don't know what The film so far has cost me, I don't know, $75,000 just to make, but promoting outside of that, we'll see what it's going to cost.
If I were a guessing person, if I looked upon it like I do the making of a CD, of which I'm musically, usually if you really want it to work, at least with a CD, you're going to have to spend probably twice as much as you spent on the production end of it. That's my feeling. Now, does it get you results? I don't know. Maybe the movie world's a little kinder, the independent movie world.
No, well, if you've been paying attention to the news, the independent movie world is as friendly as music production nowadays. It's people consume, but the money coming back isn't necessarily the thing. And it just goes back to what I'm saying. I'm making this film not because I'm looking for a cash out or a payday. Of course, that would be nice, but it's something that I believe in and I'm putting out there. It's funny because I know many people at a certain age, especially in production and film and video and whatnot, who have done production for other people and then come about my age, which I just turned 49. There's this kind of middle-aged manifesto project that comes out where this is going to be the project that does it for me. This is going to be the da-da-da. And I've seen a lot of people go through that, and it's just, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. And again, I feel like it's the wrong attitude to have. I'm creating it and I'm going to create something after this and something after this. And after that, this is a part of who I am while I'm on this planet. And it's also like trying to build what I think is most important on this planet, is building community. So the money part of it, I'm not in the same boat as you, as that I don't have a kid. I do have family, and it's nice to be able to focus on a film these are my products to the world, but I'm looking at it in the same way. I'm not looking at this to make money, but if it does, great.
Let's take a little break here because I think you're coming, because I want to pick up on that. The idea of making money in art is where we're morphing toward as two starving artists. And
if you see my belly, I'm not too starving, but
you're doing okay, my friend.
I'm hanging in there for now.
So am I. But
famous last words.
Yeah, but maybe starvation in the art world is something a little more spiritual than actually physical. I don't know. But we're talking with David Rocco FACCHINI, and he is a filmmaker predominantly. He's also a found object artist that has created some amazing stuff over the years. And I'm hoping you'll open up a gallery. Maybe we should open up a gallery in Oakland. Just share some space. You never know. But we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. You are listening to Strung Out.
Hey, want to show your support of Martin's artist endeavors? Buy Me a Coffee is an online site that makes supporting Marty easy. In just a few taps, you can make a payment of any amount, and no account is needed. You can also decide to become an ongoing supporter. Go to martinmccormack.com and click on the words Support Martin. Let's help Martin keep it all caffeinated.
Everybody wants their car to go faster than the rest. Everybody wants their car to go faster than the rest. Everybody has an elephant that wants to be relevant. Everybody wants their phone to have the latest apps. Everybody wants their phone to have the latest apps. Everybody has an elephant that wants to be relevant. Gotta come to terms with the pachyderm. Gotta come to terms with pachyderm. Gotta come to terms with the pachyderm. Gotta come to terms with the pachyderm. Ooh, 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 ooh. Everybody thinks the story is all about them. Everybody thinks the story is all about them. Everybody has an elephant that wants to be relevant. Everybody thinks the world revolves around them. Everybody thinks the world revolves around them. Everybody has an elephant that wants to be relevant. Gotta come to terms with the pack of done. Gotta come to terms with the pack of done. Gotta come to terms with the pack of done. Gotta come to terms with the pack of done. The biggest in the room. Everybody thinks their elephant's the biggest in the room. Oh, everybody has an elephant that wants to be relevant. Yeah, everybody has an elephant that wants to be relevant. Yeah, gotta come to terms with the fact of the, gotta come to terms with the fact of the. Gotta come to terms with the fact of done. Gotta come to terms with the fact of done. That wants to be relevant. Everybody has an elephant. Everybody has an elephant.
And we're back with David Rocco FACCHINI. And before we had the break, you again, we're coming up with something here that I think is important for artists to understand. That with artists, the idea of having an impact on a community is important. You want to touch souls. Then there's that other thing that's out there in the world, which is fame and recognition, not necessarily warranted either. It's just the fickle hand of fate sometimes, of which, though, if you want to draw some sort of financial money from your art directly, you want to see some matter of success. And that's what we're talking about, where how much money does it take to get even to the point of break even? And is that in and of itself ethical? To surmise what you were saying is you made that stand on the hill, and I've made that stand myself, especially at middle age, where you say, you know what? It's not, I see what it's about. It's about touching souls, as I like to say. It's about having an impact in a positive way on other people's lives, and hearing about that. That's the goal that comes back to you saying, boy, what you're doing really makes sense. And truthfully, maybe 100 years from now, people are going to be watching all the David Rocco FACCHINI films, and they'll say, he was a master of his time and nobody paid attention to him. There's that kind of thing that exists in art. And the hardest part of it, I think, and this is what I'm hear you alluding to, is coming to peace with that. Yet, at the same time, the practical application of being a business person in art has to be acknowledged and fostered. Am I right?
Yeah, one of the things I will say that is lacking at the higher education level in any art school. I taught at Columbia in Chicago, and I also was ran the stop motion department at this school called the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. Is the practice of art is one thing, but the business of art is overlooked. One of the things that we started really working on at the Academy, and in general, I also do production-based training. As an example, the cookie cutter was a production-based training exercise in that students would work on a film and then they would understand the process of not only making the film, but then promoting the film and getting it out there. So it didn't end with their part of the film, which was if it was a fabricator or an animator or lighting or cinematographer, but also they were participating in the process of taking notes, finding venues, finding festivals, budgeting. And the students that I worked with for the cookie cutter, which was a student incepted, it was the thought of the cookie cutter was all of it was created by the students, and I just walked them through the paces to make the film. This became a little bit of the business after the creation to see what that looks like. It is something that is lacking on a lot of, just in education in general, is the business in art, but it's something that I'd like to see more. And I do see more producers of animation than I have in the past, so that's encouraging. Producers are some of the most important people to have at your side. They've got good insight. They understand what venues will use your film in what time frame. Like making a feature film, it should be maybe an hour and a half versus an hour and 15, because there's like PBS might gravitate towards a film that's an hour and a half. There's certain things that can plant seeds, but ultimately in the creative process, and this outside of artists in general, the creative process is you create, and then sometimes you have to reverse engineer to make it fit into the monetary realm. But I feel like when you see films that have that backwards, you feel it throughout. You like music, you feel it throughout. There's certain things that just feel forced, or they're just more business oriented rather than coming from a real unique voice. That's the trick. There's the art of filmmaking, and then there's the business of filmmaking. Sequels and remakes, those are the business of filmmaking. And sure, they can be artistic, but no more. It's like when you have an original thought that is speaking uniquely, that is going to have its own momentum, in my opinion, because a thought that comes into its time is going to be something that people actually will model off afterwards to say, how do we do that again? How do we how do we get lightning to strike in the same place again? And no one really has the answer for that. As high up as you go, you could do as many algorithms and workshop and social studies of test audiences, but it just comes to, sometimes there's just an idea that comes along that is unique and will provoke. So that can be its own profit.
Yeah, again, you can provoke, but what does it provoke? Does it provoke, when you talk producer, that sounds like somebody you have to pay.
Fortunately, right now I work with Edwin, and we have this is the funny thing. As I've traveled across the nation and as I've met with people and I've actually shared their homes and their lives and visited with them, what I have done is, even not right now, I've been doing bartering. And it's like doing I have services that I do. It's like I build, I fix, I'm really good at organizing people's spaces and helping them declutter. That's something I did a lot. And it was just like one of these things that's just like, all right, I'm staying with you. I can do this for you. My buddy Jay, who has a place in Northern California, that when I came back to California, I was looking for a place to gather myself, and I stayed in his place there. And while I was there, I helped ready his place so he could have it as like an Airbnb. So I've done that before. So providing a service in exchange for a service is what I've been going with a lot of this. So the money part of it, really, even right now, I'm in a situation. I'm staying in Oakland, and while before I left, I was staying with a friend of mine who, she's a widow, and I became very close to her husband while he was passing of cancer, and we helped build out a tiny home, and actually even became like a surrogate parent to their child, who is now 6 years old. He'll be 7, my gosh. I'm staying here now working on my film in exchange for being like the Tony Danza of the property. I take care of the chickens, I do daycare, I cook the meals, I do the grocery shopping, I'm the handyman. And this exchange is working out. So it's just, I've like, the money part of things lately has been something that I haven't really done.
Well, do you enjoy that? Because as an artist, I think we feel more keenly time equals money and money equals time, especially when it comes to creativity. You need the money. A lot of money gives you time to be creative. A lot of,
I'm going to have to argue with that. I don't have money right now. and
you're spending your time.
One of the things that I was saying in this dynamic where I'm the Tony Danza here is that I'm able to contribute a certain amount, but I'm also very aware of my time, and money comes and goes. Time only goes. And the value of time for me is so much more important than money. I can figure out. We could all figure out money. But on the back end, I am not going to have resentment or regret that I put money above time.
Mm-hmm. What I hear you saying is that even being Tony Danza has its rewards and benefits. You are living your life, right? Yeah. That was something that, for me, I realized, my God, when I was in my 40s, I was like, I am still playing at retirement homes across the United States. I'm playing, and I'm making my money doing that. And I'm like, nobody else is doing that. I'm doing, but then I got to the point where I was like, and this is what I'm using to illustrate is, I got to the point where I was like, I'm enjoying myself. My time is being spent doing that. Yeah. Am I on a big rock stage in front of 20,000 people? No. Am I touching souls? Yeah. Am I making a difference? Yeah. That parsing of I think that's probably part of growing up, is you come to terms with this stuff and you say, as Lenin said, life, what happens to us as we're making other plans, to some degree. And that's what I hear you say, is that to people is basically you have to be comfortable in your shell, and it doesn't mean you're resigned to your life. You're enjoying your life with the anticipation of better things to come as well.
And this is the one thing that I found very interesting. And there's studies that have been done as creatively minded people get dissuaded in our education system for thinking creatively or non-linearly. And I've seen this even growing up in my friendships where we were artistic. And as we grew older, I had friends who had gone in different directions, they medicine or law enforcement, and they became less creative because they were worried about the money part of it. And I had been less worried about that because I realized that was a part of me that I couldn't detach. And in being a creatively minded person in any realm, I feel like you have to do what's going to speak to you and speak to your community, and that is, it's a reward in itself. And like you said, I think it does come with age. I definitely had some crisis moments on the road where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And there was one moment, I will say in particular, I was in New York and I had just was up in the mountains and I smashed up my carbon fiber bike, and I wanted to ride around New York in my bike, and it was an expensive bike, and I was freaking out and I was thinking about money and worried about money. And as I was on the Brooklyn Bridge, I started having a panic attack. I never had a panic attack in my life. And I just felt the darkness coming around my face. And just at that moment, there was this shirtless, shoeless, dirtied man just wandering across the Brooklyn Bridge while I'm stuck in traffic. And I was just like, listen, you have people who love you. You have people who take care of you if you would need it. You are resourceful. You have means. Take a breath. If you go into debt, you go into debt. If you got to be bankrupt, you got to be bankrupt. In this nation now, it seems like money is only, it's like money is, it seems like it's not even real sometimes until you have to feed yourself. But so many people are throwing around money. The rich have money. It's just like money comes and money goes. I'm having an experience. I'm going to see how I could facilitate this experience. And it's just like contextualizing things. So it does take time, and I still have worries about money, but it's just to not be stuck into that linear thinking that I think we get stuck in is, I think it's a practice. It almost needs to be a meditation sometimes.
You're right. Both counts. And we're going to address two things that came to my mind when you're talking about that. On the other side of this break, we're talking to David ROCCO FACCHINI, and you are watching and listening to Strung Out. And we'll be back.
Alexa, play Relevant Elephant by Martin McCormack.
Here's Relevant Elephant by Martin Lawrence McCormack on Amazon Music.
Everybody wants their car to go. I wake up with a longing soul to keep, my soul to keep. A sound of security, of being deeply loved. Everything's peaceful, everything's fine. Stars shining above, shining above. Home, beautiful home with a great big beautiful tree. A place of bliss that may not exist. It's out there, I know. It's out there, I know. Someday I'm gonna get back and see my family. Though it may not be real, inside I feel there is a home. There is a home. Beautiful home with a great big beautiful tree. A place of bliss that may not exist. It's out there, I know. It's out there, I know. Someday I'm gonna get back and see my family. Though it may not be real, inside I feel there is a home. There is a home for me.
And we're back. All right. It's amazing some of the stuff that you're bringing up, because I think this is so beneficial to artists, because I think artists in this world are, at least in this country, are conditioned to the idea of victimhood to some degree. That I use the term starving artist. It's in our lexicon. It's just the way we perceive ourselves. If you're not sleeping in your backseat of your car with a heroin habit, you're not really an artist. That's the misconceptions. But we live in a changing world. But I want to talk about that panic attack on the Brooklyn Bridge, because that's that idea of seeing that image of that person. And I do feel artists do get that spiritual sign that they're on the right path. And my question to you is, was that such a sign at such a moment, this person?
I guess it's how you look at it. If I was in another mindset, I could have looked at that person and think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be that person in 3 months. It all depends on how you look at things. Fortunately, I didn't look at it that way.
Do you ever feel that you receive the sign that you're on the right path?
You ever heard of confirmation bias?
No.
So it's if you saw a red Volkswagen Golf and you're like, oh, wow, I haven't seen one of these in a while. And then you go out into the world and all of a sudden you start seeing red Volkswagen Golfs around. It's like they've always been around, but they just haven't occurred to you because it hasn't been planted in your mind.
Let me bring you an example that happened to me. And I was in trouble with my first marriage. My wife at the time wanted me to quit music, and she didn't feel it was succeeding. She looked upon the nursing homes as an aberration. And being a Catholic and being an Irish Catholic, I asked the Blessed Virgin to send me a golden rose to tell me that I'm on the right path. So I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm playing for these people that are all have Alzheimer's. And there was this lady named Irene. And she comes up to me and she says, "This is for you." And she hands me a golden rose stick pin.
Get out of here.
And I freaked out. Interiorly, I was like, wow, all right, I'm being told. Now, I believe artists do get those messages. And to the, I think that guy, there's no mistake, even though there's a million homeless people in New York, no mistake though, at that point on the bridge, at that point, that person was sent to remind you of that you're on the right path. I don't know. It could be wrong. Maybe it's just but I do feel signs come. And I sure hope the sign comes for you when winning the Powerball.
One of my favorite religious jokes is the person who is at their home and a flood is coming and they're like, come on, a vehicle pulls up and says, come on, the flood is coming, get in the car with us, let's go. And he says, I'm not worried, God will provide. Then the flood starts rising to the first floor and a boat comes by and he said, get in the boat, come on. He's like, I'm not worried, God will provide. Finally, the flood gets to the point where he's standing on the chimney and a helicopter comes and it's dropping down a ladder. And they said, climb the ladder, let's go. He says, I'm not worried, God will provide. And the guy drowns. He goes to heaven, he's at the pearly gates and he's face to whatever face of God there is. And he says, God, how could you forsake me? I had faith in you. I thought you would provide. And God says, the hell do you want from me? I sent you a car, a boat, and a helicopter. And it's just, it all depends on how you look at it, how you look at the world and the signs that present themselves. And I will say that I have been fortunate to be surrounded by loving, caring people. And even in the worst situations, I have had people that have become my family. I have had the fortune of being able to invest in my community and also to give back to that community and a greater community. Both can be true, but I mean, there's something about the energy of people and signs. I think there's something there. I'm not a religious person anymore. I was at one point. My father was a Roman Catholic priest for 16 years. I went to all Catholic grade school and all boys Catholic high school, but I became very disillusioned with religion, mostly the business of religion. But I don't know. My best answer is I don't know what exists, but I do believe in people.
But you're a spiritual person, right?
I don't know. I just know that I'm not going to presume to know what happens to us after we go.
I'm not so much worried about that. As far as I think we have no control over that. But I do think artists, to some degree, are the closest things to being priests, because I think independent artists especially have to take the vows. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. One way or another, no matter how you slice and dice it, it does happen.
I don't know about if artistry and chastity go hand in hand, but
it can be argued. But I think it might not be the carnal kind, but there is a certain amount of chastity that's involved, staying true to the muse, so to speak. Okay. But that's why I do believe there is a little bit of a spiritual aspect to all of this. There has to be. Or,
the idea of spirituality, one of the things that frustrates me most is people talking about the riches they will receive after they die. It's, what if this is where you're supposed to receive the riches? And maybe the riches aren't the ones that are monetary. It's like the moments that your memories you have, are they about money or are they about people? Are they about events? Are they about occasions? Or are you just thinking of dollars? Are you fondly remembering the faces on cash or the faces of your loved ones? It's money is a tool, just like anything else. And it is a necessity in a lot of circles in the world. But, and like I said, I've been able to do a bartering thing for some time. Money still was needed to make my film and buy the vehicle and get the gas and get the food. But in other realms, I've been able to, if money isn't needed, I would much rather go down that avenue.
It's interesting from the standpoint that maybe not in our lifetime, but again, I half tongue in cheek about the AI, and already you hear talk about the idea of a basic income and everybody getting $1,500 into their account. And from what I can understand, the reason why that is we're going to get to that point where money is only going to be the gasoline we burn in our economic engine. It's going to be just that. It's going to be a product of consumption. That gives you a lot of time. So there's going to be a lot of artists. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be, look at this beautiful paper mache square I made, and this represents my angst. There's going to be that kind of stuff. You almost have to go the route you're talking about as far as look for community. And you say you're not religious, I get it, but I would say you're spiritual. I would say you look upon this as a spiritual undertaking. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't.
Well, I believe, yeah. I guess the whole thing is, it's interesting to imagine what the future would look like. I believe in community. I believe in people. I believe that people are generally good and they want to provide, and we are wrestling with our brainstem and our evolution and trying to figure out how do we live amongst our community and also contribute, even if it's socially, it feels good. But thinking about the future and what that might unfold is, it's a tricky thing. One of my favorite things is Star Trek, because money isn't really a thing in Star Trek, but people will pursue things for the sake of knowledge, for the sake of community and progression of community, ridding of war and ridding of poverty, ridding of homelessness, houselessness, hunger, accepting people for who they are and not judging based off, again, I feel like, not to go back to religion, but I feel like religion has instituted a lot of biases that we hold on to, sadly. Yeah, I'm losing my thought here, but the idea of understanding what the future might hold, I don't think of money ever.
Yet, how would you feel if somebody came to you today and a friend, let's say, and said, David, I came into a $30 million inheritance. And
is this you coming to me and saying this, Martin?
I wish. But I'm trying to give that hypothetical that if you were having to give a choice between financial security versus your integrity, what would that
integrity?
Or do they have to be polar opposites?
If it's a choice, I'm choosing integrity. It depends on what are we talking about here.
Is $50 million, David.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to have to make porno films.
I don't find anything wrong with porn.
Okay,
so
well, I'm trying to think of something. Okay.
Okay. If it's going to be something,
dog food commercials, cute cat videos, the rest of your life. That's the only string tied to this. You cannot use it for anything else.
Only make it. I like cats. It's a tricky thing, but it's just, I guess what it comes down to is, of course, I'm working. I got a project on the horizon that's going to pay me fairly well, and it's going to do it based off of the things that I have done in the past. And the things I've done in the past aren't like big money makers. I did well teaching and producing out here in order to make enough money to facilitate the trip that I had just been on the last couple of years for my film. So there's nothing wrong with money as a tool and being recognized for what you're worth, or at least be recognized enough to say that you are worth enough for what we're going to pay you. It's a wonderful feeling. I think but it's not about the money. It's about being validated, being respected, being understood. And I don't need to be a rich person. I don't need to have millions of dollars. If I'm able to pay, I was thinking about this the other day. I was dating somebody in high school, and her mother was asking me, what do you want to do? And I was about to graduate high school, and I said, you know what? I just want to be able to be a living artist, make make enough money so I can just exist as an artist. And I think if you ask anyone across any profession, that's what they want. They want to be able to exist comfortably for the efforts that they put out that mean something to them. And that could be anyone. So that has become such a challenge, especially in the last year or so, is really troubling. And I think it is, you talk about universal basic income and everything like that. These things are coming to pass because there is a shift happening. And finding out what's important to us is a part of that shift. And I think, again, what I found was important, again, integrity versus money. This is what I say time and time again. And I said it already. Money comes and goes. Time only goes.
And we're running out of time, but I just want to touch on one more thing here, is that validation you brought up in terms of validation. And I would argue to some degree that's even changing. That we are in a world that the structure of validation is skewed. Now, and what I'm talking about is validation for the artist on a commercial level, in the sense of I cannot stand personally any of those award shows.
Like the Oscars, the Emmys, the Golden Globes, all that kind of stuff.
And the reason being is because it's such a structured thing. You got to get into the club to be in the club. And when you're in the club knowing that there's probably thousands, if not millions, of other equally talented artists not in the club. So it just seems like it's, from a spiritual way of thinking, I feel that it's a little.
It sounds like you're rejecting the business of creativity.
Exactly. I think the business model is going to fall.
The thing about business is that business is largely built upon competition. And I'm not a competitor. I was modeled in my life that I should be competitive, and I acted accordingly. And it was a certain point in this trip that I was taking that I realized that for me, competition is useless. And the person that I was most in competition with was the vision of the self I thought I deserved based off of what other people would project on me. Like growing up, people would say, oh, you're going to be the next Steven Spielberg. You're going to be the next Walt Disney. I'm not the next anything. I'm the first and only me. And I'm going to produce something that I feel is not in competition with this future self that feels they deserve these accolades. I am deserving of what I am achieving. And to be honest, I'm happy with the accolades that I've received. I'm happy with what I'm producing. I would love opportunities. And I hear what you're saying about being a part of this kind of club, if you will, like working on this project or being able to be a part of this experience and perform at this venue and be recognized. Those are all trappings of competition. The idea of creativity being who's the best and who should get this award, it's all business. It's all on the business end. And if you realize you can separate creativity from business, you get a better perspective on things, in my opinion. I'm not working towards an award. I'm working towards my reward. And my reward is telling the story as truthfully and hopefully as being entertaining as well.
Let's leave it at that for this session. And I think it's been great. You've been very forthright and honest in your assessments of the arts. And I love it, because I think more of these conversations need to be had. And do you have time for another podcast, or do you need to go?
No, yeah, I got a little time. You want to do another hour? Is that what?
Yeah, we'll do another hour. So I'm going to wrap it up, and we're going to wrap up this edition, and then I'm going to come back with David ROCCO FACCHINI, and we're going to continue to talk about the philosophy of art. It's really what we're at. And thank you for watching and listening. And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. For more information about this show or a transcript, visit martinmccormack.com. While there, sign up for our newsletter. See you next time on Strung Out.
It's all so wrong, this pain we feel makes no sense at all. A swan song wasn't part of the deal, was no curtain call. Given no choice, given no step.